Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content. Subscribe and turn on notifications. At 41, he was a man who understood risk. As a financial risk analyst for a major firm in Port Meridian, his entire career was built on predicting and neutralizing threats, on calculating variables, on ensuring stability. His marriage, he thought, was his greatest long-term investment. 15 years with Chloe. 15 years of shared accounts. Of mortgages paid on time, of predictable, comfortable routines. He'd built them a life that was solid, secure, a fortress. Against the chaos of the world, he had done his part. He had provided. He had been present. He had been, by any reasonable metric, a good husband. But lately, the data had become erratic. Chloe, at 38, was a variable he could no longer predict. She had once been the vibrant, charismatic curator of a downtown art gallery, a woman whose energy could fill any room. Now, that energy had curdled into a constant, weary sigh. She spoke of feeling suffocated, of the routine being a cage, of needing space to breathe. Samuel had approached this problem as he would any other, methodically. He offered solutions. He took on more chores. He suggested they schedule date nights, read books on communication. He tried to quantify her unhappiness, and solve for X. But Chloe would just offer him that smile. The one that never quite reached her eyes. The one that made him feel like he was speaking a language she no longer understood. That Thursday night, the final, critical data point, was logged. They were in the living room. A silent dinner had passed between them, the food on Chloe's plate barely touched. The television murmured in the background, filling a silence that had become cavernous. She turned to him. Her expression was one he recognized, the deliberate, theatrical seriousness she adopted before making a pronouncement. "Samuel," she said. "I need a week off." He blinked. He processed the words. "Off from the gallery?" She shook her head, her dark hair brushing her shoulders. "From this. From us. I need to reconnect with myself." His internal calculus began running scenarios. "There's a spiritual retreat on the coast," she continued, her voice gaining a rehearsed momentum. "It's a place for meditation. For self-discovery. I've already booked it. I leave tomorrow morning." A familiar tightness coiled in his gut. A risk he hadn't fully priced in. But showing resistance would be counterproductive. The optimal strategy was to appear accommodating. He forced a smile. A controlled, supportive expression. Chloe had always been prone to drama. To intense emotional phases. Perhaps this was just another one. A temporary fluctuation in the market. "If that's what you need," he said, his voice calm and measured, "then you should go. I understand." Her eyes lit up. But it wasn't with gratitude. He logged the look immediately. It was relief. A profound, almost giddy relief that felt disproportionate. It was the look of someone who had just successfully executed a difficult maneuver. "Thanks for understanding," she said. She leaned in, kissed him on the cheek, a quick, transactional gesture, and then she was gone, heading upstairs to pack. Samuel sat alone in the humming silence of the living room. He didn't feel understanding. He felt a cold, prickling sense of dread. The fortress, he realized, had just been breached. Music shifts, becoming more investigative, a sense of dawning suspicion. The next morning, Friday. Samuel woke at his usual time. 6 a.m. The discipline of a routine was a comfort, an anchor. Chloe was already awake. The bedroom light was on, casting long shadows across the floor. 2 large suitcases were open on their bed, like gaping mouths. He watched her from the doorway. She was folding clothes with a focused energy he hadn't seen in months. And that's when he saw them. The anomalies. The data points that refused to fit the narrative. Tucked between a stack of plain linen pants and simple sweaters was new lingerie. Black lace. Delicate straps. The tags were still attached. Beside it, she was carefully folding an elegant silk dress, the kind she wore to gallery openings, or expensive dinners. Not to a meditation retreat. He kept his voice casual. An informal query. You're taking all that to a spiritual retreat? Chloe didn't look at him. She kept folding. Oh. Yeah, they have formal dinners in the evenings. It's part of the whole experience. The answer came too quickly. Too smooth. It was a poorly constructed lie, and it offended his analytical mind. A chill, sharp and unpleasant, moved down his spine. He said nothing more. There was no point in challenging a faulty premise directly. It was better to gather more data. He just watched. Watched as she zipped the suitcases shut with a decisive finality. Watched as she gave him that same hurried kiss from the night before. Watched as she walked out the door, promising she'd be back in a week. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, Samuel stood in the empty doorway. The vague sense of unease had crystallized into something solid. Something urgent. He was not a naturally suspicious man. He was a man who believed in trust as a functional component of a partnership. But he was not a fool. New lingerie. Fancy dresses. A rehearsed excuse. It didn't add up. The equation was broken. He went back inside. Straight to his office. He opened his laptop. He pulled up the shared vehicle GPS account he'd set up months ago. She'd complained about her phone's navigation being unreliable, and this had been the logical, efficient solution. He'd told himself he would never check it. Trust, after all. But trust is a variable, subject to changing conditions. His heart began to pound a heavy, rhythmic beat against his ribs as he scrolled through the location history from the past few weeks. And there it was. A pattern. The same address, appearing over and over. Always on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Days Chloe claimed she was meeting with artists, or staying late at the gallery. A luxury condominium complex on the east side of the city. A place called the Onyx. It wasn't a gallery. It wasn't the home of any friend he knew. He copied the address. Pasted it into a mapping service. He stared at the satellite images. A tall, modern building of glass and steel. Clearly expensive. Who did Chloe know there? The question was a formality. He already knew the answer, wasn't innocent. His unease was gone. Replaced by the cold, clear certainty of a problem that needed to be solved. Samuel did not waste time on emotion. Emotion was a contaminant. It skewed judgment. He needed facts. He called his friend Marcus, a real estate agent who knew the city's high-end properties better than anyone. Marcus, he said, his voice steady. I need a favor. It's fast. And it's discreet. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes later, his phone rang. Sam, Marcus said, his voice low. The apartment you mentioned at the Onyx. It belongs to a guy named Reed Jensen. Early 30s. He's a high-performance personal trainer. Lives alone. Marcus Paust. And, people in the building say he has a bit of a history with married women. Samuel hung up the phone. His hands were shaking. Not with sadness. With rage. A clean, clarifying rage. Reid Jensen. Personaltrainer. Single. The pieces clicked into place. With sickening precision. Chloe was cheating on him. Worse, she had orchestrated this entire week off as a romantic getaway with her lover. She thought he was a fool, sitting at home, patiently waiting for her to find herself. She had underestimated him. She had miscalculated his intelligence. And that was an insult he could not tolerate. But rage was not a strategy. He needed a plan. He picked up his phone again. He called a number a colleague had passed him months ago during a corporate fraud investigation. A private investigator. A gravelly voice answered on the second ring. Finn. My name is Samuel Thorne, he said, the words coming out sharp and clear. I need information. Now. I can't wait. He explained the situation with the detached precision of a client briefing. The wife. The retreat lie. The resort near the coast. The man's name. Finn listened without interruption. When Samuel was done, the investigator simply said, "Leave it with me. I'll call you in a few hours." Those few hours were the longest of his life. He paced the empty house, the silence pressing in on him. The home he had built felt like a museum of a failed enterprise. He looked at the framed photos on the walls, Chloe smiling her radiant smile, him standing beside her, solid and dependable. It was all a lie. A carefully curated exhibit. At 3 p.m., his phone rang. It was Finn. "Samuel. I've got news." The investigator's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Your wife isn't at any spiritual retreat. She's checked into the Oakhaven Coastal Resort. 2 hours from the city. Booked a week on her credit card." Finn post. "And she's not alone. There's a man with her. Matches the description you gave. Reed Jensen. I got some photos." "Send them," Samuel said. His voice was a whisper. When the email arrived, he had to sit down. He clicked open the files, his monitor glowing in the dim afternoon light. The first image was by the resort pool. There was Chloe, his wife, in a bikini. She was laughing, her head thrown back. And there was Reed, a muscular man with dark hair rubbing sunscreen onto her back with an easy intimacy that made Samuel's stomach clench. The second photo showed them holding hands, walking into a private cabana. The last one was at the resort's fine dining restaurant. They were clinking wine glasses, their faces so close their noses were almost touching. They looked happy. Carefree. Samuel closed his eyes. He took a deep, steadying breath. The pain was there, a sharp, physical ache in his chest. But beneath it, something else was rising. Resolve. He was not going to wait a week. He was not going to gather more evidence. He was not going to sit in this empty house and let himself be a victim. He was a risk analyst. And he had just identified the single greatest threat to his portfolio. It was time for liquidation. Music becomes a driving, resolved rhythm. Samuel grabbed his car keys. He stuffed his laptop, the charger, and a folder containing their financial statements into a backpack. Evidence. Documentation. The 2-hour drive to the coast passed in a controlled haze. He didn't listen to music. He didn't allow his mind to drift. He was focused, running through the steps of his plan. There was a sequence to this. An order of operations. He arrived at the Oakhaven Coastal Resort as evening bled across the sky in streaks of orange and purple. It was an elegant place. Manicured lawns, hushed lighting, the distant sound of the ocean. The kind of place Chloe loved. The kind of place they used to go, for their anniversary. He parked the car. Walked into the lobby, and approached the front desk. He arranged his face into a polite, concerned smile. "Good evening," he said to the young woman at the counter. "I need you to do me a favor. I need you to call one of your guests. The room is registered under Reed Jensen." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a confidential tone. "It's a family emergency. It's urgent." The receptionist's eyes widened with worry. She nodded quickly and picked up the phone. Samuel listened to the faint, tinny sound of the phone ringing. He waited. He felt strangely calm. He was in control. Then, someone answered. "Hello?" It was Chloe's voice. Surprised. A little breathless. The receptionist started to speak, a practiced line about an urgent call. But Samuel gently reached out and took the receiver from her hand. "I've got it from here. Thank you." He put the phone to his ear. For a long moment, there was only silence on the line. He could hear the faint sound of music in the background of her room. She must have realized, it was no longer the receptionist's voice. "Samuel?" she whispered. The name was a gasp of pure panic. He took a slow breath, keeping his voice perfectly level. Perfectly calm. "I see. I hope your week off is worth it, Chloe." He let the words hang in the air. I hope every single second with Reed is worth it. Because when you get back to Port Meridian, you can pick up your things from the garage. I've already spoken to my lawyer. He paused, delivering the final, decisive blow. We're done. The silence on the other end was absolute. He could almost hear the frantic spinning of her thoughts, the desperate search for an explanation, a lie. Samuel, I can explain. He hung up, before she could finish. There was nothing to explain. The data was conclusive. He handed the phone back to the stunned receptionist, offered her another polite nod, and walked out of the resort. He did not look back. Music shifts to a more solemn, methodical tone. As he drove back to the city, his phone began to ring. And ring. And ring. Chloe. He ignored it. Messages started flooding in. Please, let me explain. It was a mistake. I love you. He read each one with a kind of detached curiosity. They were meaningless now. Corrupted data from a failed system. He ignored them all. The liquidation was already in progress. By the time he got home, it was late. The house was dark and silent. His house. No. He didn't turn on the main lights. He went straight to his office, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. For the next several hours, Samuel moved with the surgical precision of a man dismantling a complex machine. First, the finances. He logged into their joint accounts. He transferred exactly half of the liquid assets, not a penny more, not a penny less, into a new account he had already opened solely in his name. He left only what was legally required. It was a clean, emotionless transaction. He downloaded and made copies of all their bank statements from the last 2 years. He saved every photo Finn had sent him. He organized everything into a single, encrypted digital folder labeled Thorn VTHORN. At 2 a.m., he drafted an email to the divorce attorney he'd researched weeks ago, back when his suspicions were just a low-frequency hum in the background of their marriage. He attached the entire evidence folder. The subject line was simple. Infidelity. Expedited proceedings. Next, he went to the bedroom they had once shared. He methodically gathered all of Chloe's belongings. Her clothes from the closet, her shoes from their racks, her handbags, her countless beauty products from the bathroom. He packed everything into the suitcases she'd left behind, and a series of cardboard boxes from the garage. He worked without stopping. A cold, focused energy driving him forward. When he was done, he stacked everything neatly inside the garage. By the door. His final act before dawn was to change the locks on the front and back doors himself. He was, after all, a man who understood structures. At 6 a.m. on Saturday, as the first light of a new day filtered through the kitchen window, Samuel sat at the table, drinking a cup of black coffee. He was exhausted. But he felt a strange, unnerving clarity. The anger was gone. The pain had receded. All that remained was a deep, quiet resolve. Chloe's calls and texts continued all through Saturday and Sunday. A barrage of desperate, contradictory messages. She was sorry. It was a phase. Reed meant nothing. She was confused. She loved him. Only him. He read each one. And then he deleted it, without replying. On Sunday afternoon, she finally appeared. He saw her through the window, stepping out of a taxi. Her eyes were red and swollen. She fumbled with her key at the front door. Her confusion turning to panic when it wouldn't turn. She rang the doorbell. Insistently. Samuel opened the door, but he blocked the entrance with his body. He did not let her in. Samuel, please, she started, her voice breaking. Just listen to me. He held up a hand, cutting her off. The gesture was calm, but absolute. No. You've lied enough. Your things are in the garage. The divorce papers will be served this week. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. She started to cry, a storm of messy, theatrical sobs. She tried to step closer, to reach for him. He took a step back. You asked for a week off from our marriage, he said, his voice sharp and precise. I gave it to you. You used that time, and our money, to sleep with another man at a luxury resort. You laughed in my face. So now, Chloe, I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Freedom. Not for a week. Forever. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a low, controlled whisper. I worked for years to give you a good life. I trusted you. And you threw it all away. For a personal trainer. Congratulations on your choice. He pointed toward the garage. Your things. Get them and go. She looked at him, her eyes pleading. And Reed? What about? Samuel gave a bitter, humorless smile. Oh, about that, Reed already knows everything. My investigator, Finn, had a little chat with him yesterday. He watched the color drain from her face. Apparently, Reed had no idea you were married. You told him you were separated. When he found out the truth that I knew everything and was divorcing you, he blocked your number. Funny, isn't it? Nobody wants to be the public villain. He delivered the final analysis. So now you have no husband, no lover, and soon, no home. Samuel, you can't do this, she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. I can, he said. And I am. Now, get off my property, before I call the police. He shut the door in her face. And locked it. He heard her sobbing on the other side. He heard her eventually make her way to the garage, the sound of boxes being dragged across the concrete. He heard the taxi return. And drive her away. And then, finally, silence. The system had been purged. Music shifts, a new theme begins, reflective, hopeful, and calm. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal paperwork and structured meetings. It was a process Samuel understood. Clear inputs. Predictable outputs. He presented the evidence. The case was irrefutable. Chloe tried to contest the division of assets, but she had no legal ground. The photos, the credit card statements, it was an open and shut case of infidelity. He kept the house. He kept the majority of their investments. She received only what the judge deemed legally mandated, which wasn't much. Samuel was discreet. He didn't post about it online or create public drama. He simply informed a few close friends and family members of the facts. But the truth, he found, was an efficient networker. Rumors began to circulate within the tight-knit arts community of Port Meridian. Students canceled their private tours with her. The gallery where she worked, citing a need to protect its reputation, chose not to renew her contract. Her career, once the source of her vibrant identity, crumbled. She moved into a small apartment with her sister. Her life reduced to a cautionary tale whispered at cocktail parties. 3 months after the confrontation, Samuel was in a different place. Literally, he sold the house in Port Meridian. It was an asset tainted with bad data. He accepted a lucrative job offer with a larger firm in Crestwood Bay, a city 3,000 miles away, overlooking the Pacific. A challenging new project. A clean slate. The move was liberating. He settled into a modern apartment with a view of the Sound. He threw himself into his work. But he also began to recalibrate his personal life. He rejoined a gym. He even started seeing a therapist, not to process grief, but to optimize his mental state for future success. And it was at a company networking event that he met Hannah. She was a data scientist. Smart, funny, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. They started talking about predictive models and market volatility, and somehow, that conversation flowed seamlessly into dinners and weekend hikes. Samuel was honest with her about his divorce, from the beginning. He presented her with the sanitized, factual version of events. The story of a good man who had been betrayed, and had the strength to walk away. She admired him for it. She saw him as strong, decisive, and resilient. Meanwhile, Chloe remained trapped in a cycle of regret. She tried to reach him a few times in those first months, using unknown numbers. The message was always the same. She had made the biggest mistake of her life. She wanted a second chance, Samuel blocked each number. Without replying. She tried contacting Reed again. He had blocked her on every platform. The fantasy she had traded her life for had vanished as quickly as it appeared. 6 months after that fateful week, Samuel sat at a seaside restaurant in Crestwood Bay with Hannah beside him. They had just come back from a long hike, and she was excitedly talking about a new algorithm she was developing. He looked at her bright, intelligent face, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Order. Peace. The satisfying quiet of a perfectly balanced equation. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from another unknown number. He glanced down. It was from Chloe. Samuel, it's me. I know you've blocked me, but I had to tell you. You were right. I ruined everything. I lost my job, my reputation, the house. And I lost you. I hope you're happy. You always deserved better. He read the message. He registered her pain as a final data point, confirming his victory. Then he sighed. A small exhalation of breath. And simply deleted it. There was nothing left to say. Chloe had asked for a week off from their marriage. And on day one, he had given her exactly what she deserved. A lifetime of it. In doing so, he had gained his own freedom. The chance to start over, with someone who valued him. Someone who made sense. As he put his phone away and turned his attention back to Hannah, he realized the pain had finally faded completely. He didn't hate Chloe anymore. He just felt nothing. And in a way, that was the greatest victory of all. He had chosen his dignity. Over begging for someone who didn't respect him. He had chosen to act. Without hesitation, without allowing room for more lies. And now, he was reaping the rewards. She was living with the consequences of her choices. A permanent sentence of regret. Those were her variables to manage now. He was finally free. Happy. And ready for a future that was, at last, predictable. Secure. Safe. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And turn on notifications, so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.